with the fate of the world lying in the balance.
These thugs with badges don't owe anybody any favors. Between life and death, driven by honor.
Vampire Hunter D, the classic 1985 action horror anime film that scarred a 10-year-old me as I watched during the Sci-Fi Channel's legendary Saturday anime block in the late hours of the night, sometime in the late 90s.
You're watching Saturday Anime on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Its animation may seem crude by today's standards, but there are still certain scenes and images from Vampire Hunter D that are burned into my soul. The giant werewolf attacking Doris's horse during the film's opening, the flashes of lightning revealing Count Magnus Lee's vampiric grin, Rei Jinsei's head exploding against that wall near the end of the movie, and those snake women obsessed with licking D with their forked tongues. Ugh. Huh? It's a campy, cheesy, gory, breakneck-paced slice of old-school anime goodness. But I'm sure when most people nowadays think of Vampire Hunter D, they remember the 2000 sequel, Vampire Hunter D: Bloodlust. And for good reason. Superb animation, better story and pacing, better characters and voice acting. It's a masterpiece. And during Bloodlust's production, a game was created as a tie-in promotional piece. In an attempt to generate hype for the movie and cash in on the popularity of the survival horror genre, Vampire Hunter D was released for the PlayStation 1 on December 9th, 1999 in Japan. North American and European releases would follow in the year 2000. And yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Let's get this out of the way. Vampire Hunter D is not a good game. But it is a fascinating one, and if you know this channel, I'll take fascinating over traditionally good every time. Examining this game also gives me the opportunity to dive into the Vampire Hunter D franchise, which actually started as a series of novels that are still being written to this day, 57 and counting. So let's take a look at the terrible PS1 game and the much larger world of Vampire Hunter D. Vampire Hunter D, the game, was developed by Victor Interactive Entertainment. And since this is a survival horror game on the PlayStation from the late 90s, you can probably guess how it plays. Tank controls, awkward combat, key item hunting, and light puzzle solving. Check, 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 and check. Though it bears all of those hallmarks of the genre, Vampire Hunter D doesn't really feel like a survival horror game. It has many surface-level horror tropes. The game takes place in a large gothic castle inhabited by monsters that all want to kill you. There's moody music and a lonely atmosphere, but the player character D is, if you couldn't tell from the title, a vampire hunter. He's also a dhampir, the offspring of a vampire and a human, so something of a monster himself. He uses a long sword, magic, and hand grenades and flashbangs. He's got black body armor, a cool cape, and a big hat. He can absorb enemies into his left hand. There's no better way to reduce the threat an enemy poses than to give the player the ability to suck them into an oblivion and feed off of their life force. I don't know if adding that to the end of the sentence helped to make it any less suggestive.
Ah, yummy. Feed me more.
Clearly, Vampire Hunter D is striving for a more action-based experience, but the devs at Victor didn't quite know how to make that work. Or, more likely, weren't allowed to venture too far outside of the survival horror wheelhouse by the money men behind the game's production. In any case, they never hit upon the spark of inspiration the developers at Capcom would while working on Onimusha or Devil May Cry, two games that function within a survival horror framework, but focus more heavily on making combat fun. Maybe it was the limited power of the PlayStation 1 holding them back. But I feel like if Vampire Hunter D had come out a couple years later, we'd have a much different and probably better game. at least in the same realm as something like Chaos Legion or Bujingai, the Forsaken City, two Devil May Cry knockoffs that don't quite hit the same heights of excellence, not even close really, but are good enough. And honestly, Chaos Legion and Bujingai have enough unique things going for them to stand apart from Devil May Cry. I just remember when those games came out, I went and bought them because I thought, ooh, this reminds me of Devil May Cry. Character action games. And sometimes that's all you really need. Other times, you need a Japanese pop star like Gakto to be the model for your main protagonist. But that's a story for another time. Speaking of story, as mentioned, the Vampire Hunter D PS1 game is based on the second Vampire Hunter D film, Bloodlust, which itself is an adaptation of the third Vampire Hunter D novel, Demon Death Chase. The books were written by Hideyuki Kikuchi, beginning with the aptly titled Vampire Hunter D in 1983. Kikuchi had just burst onto the Japanese horror fiction scene the previous year with his debut novel, Makai Toshi Shinjuku, better known in the West as Demon City Shinjuku. Most of you probably know it from the 1988 film, also a staple of the mid to late 90s Sci-Fi Channel Saturday anime lineup. I've seen Demon City Shinjuku about a dozen times over the years, but I've never read the book. So as research for this video, I decided to remedy that with the English translation by Digital Manga Publishing. And, you know, it's not a great book, but it is fun. And I was surprised to find that aside from the character names and the setting, a demon-infested Shinjuku ward that's been cut off from the rest of Tokyo, the book and the movie have almost nothing in common. While the film has a more macabre, serious tone and deals with a pretty straightforward series of encounters leading up to the main antagonist, the sorcerer Levi Ra, the book has a much more cyberpunk-infused aesthetic. The film shows some people still scavenging an existence in the demon-infested city, but the book details an entire society cut off from the rest of civilization, depicting Shinjuku as a lawless area overrun with rival street gangs, Yakuza remnants, and ordinary people just trying to live their lives alongside the threat of demons, interdimensional wormholes, and other eldritch horrors. One of my favorite scenes occurs when the two main characters, Kyoya and Sakuya, arrive in Kabukicho, the demon center of Shinjuku, which they get to by taking a cab, by the way, so taxi services are still active in the demon city. On what passed for the surface roads, frenzied music spilled out of the prefab flash clubs. Here, a deep-water cyborg and a mutant bearman grappled with each other. There, a lone Yakuza, swaggering down the sidewalk, was grabbed by another gang hiding in the shadows, dragged down an alley and made a victim of their torture machines, scalpels and needles and various other implements attached to the tips of their hands and feet. A scream. A giant snake, clad in shirt and pants, twined around a 17 or 18-year-old girl. The kid who appeared to be her boyfriend fired a pocket rocket on his wrist and blew away the head of the snake man. As they patted their chests in relief, a giant leech the size of a 10-foot square carpet dropped out of the window of an abandoned building and enveloped them. The pedestrians in the vicinity didn't spare them a second glance. Only idiots walked next to a building if they didn't know exactly what was lurking inside. The book definitely has a more tongue-in-cheek tone and energized teenage anime style pacing to it. Again, not a masterpiece by any stretch, but an interesting read, especially if you've seen the film. Anyway, Demon City Shinjuku proved to be wildly popular, and Kikuchi followed that up with the first volume of Vampire Hunter D, which also proved to be wildly popular. Vampire Hunter D couldn't be more different in both tone and style from Demon City Shinjuku, taking stronger influences from gothic horror literature, as well as dashes of spaghetti westerns. Vampire Hunter D's tone is more somber and wistful. It still has comedic relief sprinkled throughout and plenty of action, but there's definitely more of a focus on the loneliness inherent in the life of a wandering vampire hunter. Vampire Hunter D takes place in the far-flung future of 12,090 AD. Most of the stories are set in a vast post-apocalyptic stretch of the world known as the Frontier. Around the year 1999, a nuclear war wiped out most of humanity, leaving a race of vampires to pick up the pieces. Over the next several thousand years, the vampires named themselves nobles and rebuilt the world in their own image, constructing not only castles and sanctuaries, but entire cities, infrastructure, networks of transportation. They advanced in the study of science and bioengineering, achieved spaceflight, established a city on the moon. Fusing their advanced technology with their supernatural powers, they created many breeds of magical creatures for the sake of experimentation, and also as a means to keep the remaining human populace under their control. Some created human farms, where they kept and bred men and women for their own food sources. Eventually, the nobility developed a form of clairvoyance known as scientific prophecy, and through it they foresaw their downfall, perpetuated by their own decadence and hubris. The prophecy led to a seismic shift in their society, setting off rifts between vampire factions, sometimes leading to conflicts and war. Slowly, the vampires' reign started to fade, and humans began to rebuild their strength. By the time of the beginning of the Vampire Hunter D saga in the late 121st century, the noble vampires are near extinction, their cities, castles, and infrastructure in ruins. But the world is still a dark and dangerous place, akin to early medieval times, just with some hyper-advanced technology sprinkled throughout, gathered from what humans could salvage and make use of by plundering vampire ruins. The vampires' bioengineered monstrosities still exist across the frontier in large numbers as well. Everything from werewolves to golems, serpent men to dragons, fairies to mermaids, necessitating the existence of several classes of hunters. The most fearsome and revered of which are the vampire hunters, those fearless few who track and kill the remaining nobility. This is where our main man D comes into it. A lone figure dressed all in black, riding through the frontier on the back of his cybernetic horse. It's hinted in the very first book that D is a descendant of the vampire's sacred ancestor. Whispers and rumors pass down through the millennia of a love affair between this highest of vampiric nobility and a human woman. The films more explicitly make this connection, with Magnus Lee straight up asking if D is the son of Count Dracula near the end of the first movie. And Bloodlust has a scene that's ripped straight out of Symphony of the Night concerning Dee's human mother. The books attempt to keep it vague for a while, but eventually more of Dee's origins are slowly revealed, and more information about the sacred ancestor and his bloodline comes to light. I was actually curious where the concept of Dracula and a human having a dhampir son named Alucard came from, so I did a little digging. The first use of the name Alucard was in the 1943 Universal horror film Son of Dracula. However, in that movie, Dracula himself was using the name as a pseudonym in an attempt to hide his true identity. I guess when you've been around for hundreds of years without human contact, you assume dumb tricks like spelling your name backwards will fool anybody. To be fair, the other characters are fooled for quite a while, so yeah, what do I know? And though the Alucard in that movie wasn't actually the son of Dracula, the notion of Dracula having a son and other offspring took hold. And as far as I could find, Vampire Hunter D in 1983 is the first piece of media to depict the son of Dracula as a dhampir. Dhampir themselves appeared in other media, such as Marvel's Blade comic book series, which began publication in 1973. God, 1943, 1973, 1983? Am I following the thread of a conspiracy here? Were any of Dracula's descendants or other dhampirs mentioned in 53 or 63? Probably. The concept of dhampir actually originated in Balkan folklore, where most of our common knowledge about vampires also originates. They were typically the product of a union between a male vampire and his former wife or unrequited lover during his human life. There aren't any sources depicting a female vampire with a male lover, but as most of this stuff passed into writing through oral tales over many, many years and were then edited and culled down, there's always the possibility there may have been stories like that floating around too. But then you gotta start looking at the psychology of these kinds of superstitions emerging from an old patriarchal society where the weak will of a female could be easily dominated and manipulated, and it becomes a whole other discussion entirely. In many of those old tales, dhampir became vampire hunters, since their paternal bloodline gave them the strength and ability to go toe-to-toe with such monsters. So that's where that whole idea came from. and it was Konami's Castlevania 3 in 1989 that made the character of Alucard a true separate entity, not just Dracula using a crappy pseudonym. I honestly find that hard to believe given the vast amount of fiction dealing with Dracula and vampires, but that's all I could find through my research. If anyone knows of any earlier sources for Alucard as an actual character, let me know in the comments. In the original story for Castlevania 3, Alucard is a full vampire who became one, along with his father, after the latter sold his and his son's soul to the devil in exchange for power. In 1997, Symphony of the Night altered that storyline by introducing Alucard's mother, Lisa, a human woman who fell in love with Dracula and bore his son. And this change seems to have been inspired by Dee's mysterious origins that are hinted at in the Vampire Hunter D novels. So yeah, all of this to say Dee is the dhampir son of Dracula. Due to a mistranslation in the original film, the English versions refer to these half-vampire, half-human creatures as dunpeals. In Japanese, dhampir is pronounced danpiru, and when the Japanese writers wrote it out in English, they did it phonetically, making the error. But the English localizers at the time just stuck with it, for whatever reason. With Vampire Hunter D's popularity in the English-speaking world, this mistranslated term made its way into other media, like tabletop games and other fiction. And yeah, it just grates on me. I can't refer to it as dunpeel. That's stupid. It's dhampir. The English translations of the novels corrects the term. It's always referred to as dhampir there. So having said my piece on that, Dee is a dhampir, blessed or cursed, depending on how you want to look at it, with vampiric speed, strength, and supernatural abilities. But he also suffers their weaknesses to sunlight, running water, crosses, and a stake through the heart. According to the lore, a dhampir's human origins help to bolster their immune system to most of those weaknesses, but they still suffer greatly. Dee, meanwhile, is frequently shown to exhibit far stronger resistances than other dhampir, owing to him being the offspring of the sacred ancestor. Dee also has the help of a mysterious creature that lives in his left hand. Dee's left hand, or just left hand as it's commonly referred to, is a symbiote that manifests in the form of a shriveled face on the palm of his hand. It acts as a sort of partner to Dee on his journeys, providing commentary and advice on situations and other characters, usually in a sardonic tone. There are strong hints, especially throughout the books, that their relationship isn't entirely a friendly one. It's downright antagonistic at times, which adds an interesting dynamic. Dee often uses left hand to investigate, follow tracks, determine the properties of objects, and to fight. But the left hand's most important ability is regeneration. An instance in the first book and movie shows the left hand ingesting the four elements, earth, fire, water, and wind, to revive Dee, even after he's had a stake driven through his heart. There are subtle nods as to how these two came to partner up, but their backstory remains, even to this day, a mystery. The thing that's most fascinating about the Vampire Hunter D series is that all of this lore and tidbits of thousands of years of history are sprinkled very sparsely throughout the 57 novels. For example, the first novel, which the first film is based on, merely introduces the world, slight hints of the vampire's history, some strange technology they've left behind, as well as Dee and his left hand, all wrapped around a fairly standard hunt down the vampire terrorizing the local area to save the girl who's been bitten kind of story. The second novel, Razor of Gales, reveals the vampire race's obsession with scientific research and bioengineering, as well as their interest in art. In a ruined laboratory that acts as the central destination in the story, Dee and that novel's female protagonist, Lena, yeah, each book has a new female lead, kind of like a Bond girl. Anyway, they discover several millennia-old noble paintings, and Dee ruminates on how some of them depict the vampire's yearning or reaching out for sunlight. These particular paintings were banned during the height of noble society, yet the ones that weren't destroyed found their way into the hands of nobility collectors. Razor of Gales also makes mention of a capital city, established by the nobles that has since been commandeered by humans somewhere in the world, home to a university and a far more advanced society than what exists out on the frontier. The third book, Demon Death Chase, again the one Bloodlust is based on, includes the noble's ability to travel to space. It also mentions other achievements in transportation, such as bullet train-esque vehicles that once had railways crisscrossing the continents, allowing vampires to travel by day in sunlight-sealed train cars. The fourth book, Tale of the Dead Town, takes place on a hovering city, technology reconfigured by humans that allows them to migrate across the world, relatively safe from most of the dangers of the frontier. The fifth book, The Stuff of Dreams, introduces meat beasts, bioengineered cattle that regenerate their bodies, allowing meat to be painlessly sliced off and used as food. Look, maybe not as impressive as spaceflight or banned vampiric art, but in a world plunged into the Dark Ages, it's not a bad thing to have an endless food source. I could go on, listing out more details or some new facet of the world that's revealed in each book, but you get the idea. Each book features a self-contained tale, with Dee traveling to or arriving at a different location and solving some mystery related to a vampire bounty he's hunting. There are a few stories that span multiple books, but for the most part each one is independent, with its own cast of characters and adventure. Some callbacks and hints at earlier characters and events exist, but those are few and far between. I've been reading Vampire Hunter D since the first book was published in English back in 2005 by Dark Horse. That's not to say I'm reading it for the expert prose though. Most of the time the writing is kind of trash, to be honest. And it's not English translator Sean Leahy's fault either. Since moving to Japan and learning the language, I've read several Vampire Hunter D volumes in Japanese, and yeah, Kikuchi's writing is just so melodramatic. I can't tell you how many times in a single book he'll describe D as beautiful and call his presence the very darkness itself, and describe in winding sentences how his loneliness emanates from him, yet he stays as stoic as a bronze statue. But one of Kikuchi's most annoying tendencies is asking questions directly to the reader. Questions that the reader already knows the answer to, more often than not. Like every time Dee's left hand is introduced into a story, Kikuchi will write something like, "Where did that mysterious voice come from? Who could Dee be talking to?" Yeah, we know who he's talking to, Kikuchi. This is like the 23rd book. Even if he's accounting for new readers who are unfamiliar with the world and characters, it doesn't have to be written as a question. I can't stand it. I'd say the first 5 books are pretty shaky, plot and writing-wise, but if you make it to book 6, Pilgrimage of the Sacred and Profane, or just skip to that one, the storytelling starts to get much better. But I still love the Vampire Hunter D books because of their lore, world building, and fast-paced, straightforward narratives. It takes me like 3 hours or less to read one. I just devour these things. All that world building is helped in no small part by the gorgeous covers and black and white interior illustrations provided by Yoshitaka Amano. Amano is most well known nowadays for his work on the Final Fantasy series, which began in 1987. His design work is often highlighted as one of the key features that allowed Final Fantasy to forge its own identity against the pioneering Dragon Quest and Akira Toriyama's more playful and cartoony style. And that's no knock against Toriyama. His character and conceptual work defines that series perfectly. But if you're a Japanese video game developer looking to differentiate your role-playing game at a time when the power of consoles didn't allow you to work outside of simple 2D sprites and 56 simultaneous colors, look no further than the Marianas Trench-sized gap between Akira Toriyama and Yoshitaka Amano's styles. Just as Amano would go on to breathe visual life into Final Fantasy's earliest entries, he brought that same level of dreamlike and otherworldly quality to Vampire Hunter D 4 years earlier. The art really acts as a springboard, allowing your imagination to run with Kikuchi's descriptions of his characters and world. And the success of the series led to an animated film based on the first novel.
New anime no tanjou. Vampire Hunter D.
So we circle back to the beginning of this video and the 1985 film, which would eventually get an English dub in 1992 by Streamline Pictures. Streamline even took Vampire Hunter D on the festival circuit throughout the United States, marketing it as the first animated horror film for adults. So, Vampire Hunter D became something of an international success, but Kikuchi was reportedly never happy with the cheap look of the movie. His words. And I mean, yeah, the character designs aren't exactly faithful to Amano's original art, and the animation looks pretty low quality at times, even for something from the mid-80s. The first Macross film, Do You Remember Love, was released just a year earlier, pushing the limits of animation technique and the wallets of its producers. Next to that, Vampire Hunter D looks like a child's flipbook, but it still has a charm all its own. And it's such a schlocky good time. The pacing is insane. It feels like there's no time to breathe, especially in the English dub, because the actors barely have enough time to squeeze their lines out. Director Toyu Ashida claimed he wanted to make something that people tired from work or studying could just kick back and enjoy, and I think he nailed it. And for a long time, this was D's only representation in media outside the books. There were a few audio drama adaptations of the first few stories, using the movie's voice cast, and Kikuchi continued to pen novels, but there was no manga adaptation. Not in the 80s or 90s anyway. The panels I've been using throughout the video are from the Vampire Hunter D series that was launched in 2007. No television series, no sequel film, for almost 15 years. Until enter Yoshiaki Kawajiri. Yoshiaki Kawajiri is an anime director who was no stranger to Kikuchi's work. His first project as director was an adaptation of the novel Wicked City, a film probably best known for the opening scene where a dude goes home with a lady he met at a bar who then, during the act, turns into a spider demon and tries to kill him. There's so many titties and sexual situations in Wicked City, it's practically a hentai. Kawajiri then went on to adapt Demon City Shinjuku, which we've already talked about. He was also a screenwriter and supervisor on the adaptation of another one of Hideyuki Kikuchi's novels, A Wind Named Amnesia. But Kawajiri's best-known work is probably Ninja Scroll, which was an original story that he wrote and directed. After this string of successes, he had the freedom to pursue whatever project he wanted. Thanks to the English release of the first Vampire Hunter D film in the early 90s and its presence on American television, the Sci-Fi Channel was rerunning the film every few months at this point, the demand was high for a follow-up. And so Kawajiri returned to his roots in a way, re-entering Kikuchi's fictional universe, and became writer and director for a new Vampire Hunter D film, which in Japan was released as just Vampire Hunter D. The Bloodlust subtitle was only added to the Western versions of the film. That didn't make it confusing at all when I was searching for a Blu-ray copy of it on Amazon Japan a few years ago. Besides the naming conventions, Bloodlust has a few other interesting production details. Since fan demand for a sequel was highest in North America, the producers decided they'd aim for a theatrical release in that region. So the decision was made to record Bloodlust in English first. Most of the film's post-production was completed at a studio in California. And even when it was released in Japanese theaters, it was shown with English dialogue and Japanese subtitles. The Japanese voice cast wouldn't be included until the home video releases. This was a time when anime was climbing toward the peak of its home video market dominance in the West. So the decision to target an English-speaking audience first isn't all that wild in retrospect.
Siskel and Ebert call it the video pick of the week. Akira is yours for only $4.95 with subscription when you order the Best of Japanese Animation Collection series. With these state-of-the-art sci-fi classics, you will enter a world beyond imagination, a future out of control, and an experience you will never forget. Don't say we didn't warn you.
And at the time, it looked like the sky was the limit. So you had a bunch of different companies trying to license everything under the sun. Great if you were a fan, but completely unsustainable from a business standpoint, which is one of the major factors that led to the anime home video market crashing in the late 2000s. There are several other triggers for that, but we're moving far outside the scope of this video. I mean, we're already pretty far off center. This is supposed to be about the Vampire Hunter D PS1 game, but I'm working my way back to that. If you're new to this channel, this is just kind of how I operate.
The last thing I really want to say about Bloodlust is that it's absolutely gorgeous. This is due in no small part to art director Yutaka Minowa, who made it his mission statement to make the film's visuals more closely mimic Yoshitaka Amano's artwork. Great care was taken to preserve his ethereal character and environmental designs. There are several scenes that are jaw-dropping, and images that stick in the mind because of their beauty and otherworldliness. The ornateness of the designs, adherence to the descriptions in the books and concept work by Amano, and attention to small details like shadows and lighting make Bloodlust instantly recognizable. And the Japanese Blu-ray box even comes with a segment of film reel within its thick, behind-the-scenes booklet, which itself includes interviews and essays about the film's creation and legacy. During production, it was decided that a tie-in video game would be created for the Sony PlayStation. As I said earlier, it was a way to promote the film, but also a way to cash in on the popularity of the survival horror genre. Since the two were being produced side by side, there's a lot of crossover in terms of design. The character designs in-game are all pulled from the concept work in the film, so everyone is instantly recognizable. I like the way they painted details onto the character models to give them more definition. This technique allows the simple 3D models to appear more detailed than they actually are. The game doesn't have the greatest graphics by late-era PS1 standards, but it makes up for it with these clever visual flourishes. The environmental design is also pretty spectacular. The huge opening room of the castle is pulled directly from the film, complete with a ridiculously large set of stairs and portrait at the top displaying Carmilla, the main antagonist of the movie and game. Notice I said movie and game, not the book. We'll come back to that. While the level design itself isn't the most innovative, the entire castle is basically made up of mirrored hallways and rooms on each side, the art direction and detail in the pre-rendered backgrounds sells the setting. There are even details not present in the film but pulled from the books, like how the basement and third floor of the castle have a more sci-fi inspired look to them compared to the first and second floors where most of the exploration takes place. There are several books in the series that mention the high-tech inner workings of the nobility's castles, while the facades and living quarters maintain a more gothic aesthetic. And there are even areas where the two styles are blended together, fully integrating the science fantasy feel of the setting. It's impressive. Some of the camera angles are terrible. This is kind of a thing in many early survival horror games. It can sometimes be used effectively because you can't see what the character sees, adding an extra layer of terror and tension. But again, Vampire Hunter D's more action-focused just makes this aspect of the presentation annoying. Like, this pulled back perspective in the main hall is impressive when you're just running through it, taking it all in. But later in the game, when you have to fight a boss here, it's pretty rough. Hey, what are you guys fighting over there? The other place where I feel the game falters is in the enemy design. All of the bosses are characters from the film, but normal enemies that you spend the majority of your time fighting are original creations, and there's a clear drop in quality and an incongruity to the designs. There are lumbering zombie-like monsters and just bats. Vampire bats, mind you, but still just bats, which are the first enemies you'll encounter. Then there are female demons wielding swords, which are extremely frustrating to deal with because they parry your attacks. Others include wolf-like creatures that spew lightning, giant spider-esque enemies, dragonfly-like things that breathe fire, flying demons with pitchforks, poison-spewing slugs carrying spears in the sewers. Yes, this vampire castle has a sewer system that you have to explore. Oh joy. But in any case, these are all fine, I guess, but the Vampire Hunter D world is filled with so many more interesting and stranger creatures. I feel like they could have pulled more inspiration from the books. Two of the weirder enemies in the game are these transparent blood-sucking things that latch onto you, restricting your movement, and the cubes guarding the operational components of the castle on the third floor. Those are pretty memorable. Even though that last one is just a metallic cube that reconfigures itself to attack, it's jarring and unexpected when they appear, so I kinda liked it. There's always something slightly unnerving about simple geometry out to kill you. But yeah, that's it for the enemies. There are red, stronger variations of the zombie-like creatures that pop up, but overall the roster is pretty small. Sometimes you'll get situations where there's some thought put into enemy placement, with different types put together to make you have to prioritize the most dangerous or annoying ones, but those moments are few and far between. And while the bosses are pulled from the characters in Bloodlust and feature unique moves and attacks, the way most of the boss fights actually play out are fairly similar, but we'll talk about that later. The music in the game is very different from what's found in the film. Bloodlust's soundtrack was composed by Marco D'Ambrosio and features more orchestrated and choral pieces, really hammering home the gothic atmosphere. Who composed the music for the game isn't directly listed in the credits, but Hiroshi Furukawa, Seiichiro Nagai, and Hikoshi Hashimoto are the sound designers. Of those three, Hikoshi Hashimoto is the only one with any other credits listed on Moby Games, so I don't know if it was just him and the others were sound effects, or if Vampire Hunter D was a collaborative effort. In any case, the music has more of a synthesizer-centric palette compared to the films. It's pretty good for what it is. In the main castle, the tracks are more minimal and mysterious, setting the mood. When more sci-fi influences become apparent, that creeps into the music as well. And the final boss fight has a suitably cheesy, retro anime-inspired sound that I actually like a lot. Then there's the voice acting. The Japanese version of the game makes use of the cast from the film, but the English version uses a completely different cast, except for Wendy Lee as Charlotte. Wendy Lee was pretty much everywhere at the time, so that doesn't really surprise me. She voiced Faye Valentine in Cowboy Bebop, Haruhi Suzumiya in The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, Bulma in Dragon Ball. The list goes on. She only has a few scenes in this game though. It's actually the same as in the movie. For the most part, I prefer the cast in the movie, but the one change I'm glad of is Dee's left hand, who's voiced by Mike McShane in Bloodlust. I don't like his voice, and in the English script, he talks non-stop. The Japanese dub has whole chunks of Dee's left hand's dialogue cut, and the movie is so much better for it. Anyway, John Hostetter voices Left Hand in the game, and it's much better. Overall, the voices are actually pretty good, but the line delivery sometimes, tons of chuckle-worthy moments. Still, that's part of what gives Vampire Hunter D its charm. Longtime viewers of the channel will know I love me some corny voice acting.
Oh, Layla, the vampire killed everybody.
It's nice to meet you. I am Bengi of Barbaroy.
Oh my, a hand is talking to me.
Hello, I live in Dee's left hand.
This is a bad dream.
As for gameplay, Vampire Hunter D sticks a little too cookie-cutterly close to Resident Evil and doesn't let itself capitalize on some of the more interesting mechanics that it introduces. The first thing that's probably going to mess with you if you decide to play it are the tank controls. Now, I know this is a deal breaker for a lot of players, but I really don't mind tank controls. I think it's because I grew up playing so many early 3D and survival horror games, and this was the best solution developers could come up with until real-time 3D games became more prominent in the genre. So this stuff's just kind of imprinted in my muscle memory. But even so, Vampire Hunter D feels weird to play at first. I think it's because D moves so quickly. Most survival horror protagonists are everymen and women who, in a lot of cases, have no experience fighting or shooting a firearm. So the clunkiness gets that point across, in theory. But D is a professional, and a supernatural entity. Just the way he's animated feels like he should control more fluidly. There's a real disconnect that takes some getting used to. Once you do get used to it, it ends up feeling like any other survival horror game. Running is the default, but D can walk by holding L1, and you're going to need to do this sometimes. I can't tell you how many times I awkwardly sprinted against walls, mashing the circle button, trying to get through doorways and missing because D's position and angle weren't just right. In the options, you can set D to walk by default and hold L1 to run, but I felt like that was more of a hassle. Most of the time, you're going to want to be running. But there are a few platforming sections where you need slightly more control. Thankfully, there aren't many of these, and the punishment for failure is very forgiving. For example, one room late in the game has you jumping between platforms in darkness over bottomless pits. But if you fall, you're just reset back to the beginning of the room. You don't even lose any health. Down in the sewers, there's a short, moving platform segment, which is frustrating, but even though the water does hurt you since you have that vampiric weakness, the time in between damage ticks is incredibly long. Basically, you can run through the water with hardly any penalty. It's a little ridiculous, honestly. The only time where any jumping section really screws you over is in the second floor hallways with the laser alarms across the floor. If you hit one of these, it spawns several enemies into the room that all need to be destroyed before the doors will unlock and you can leave. Combine that with the terrible camera angles, and it's very easy to accidentally trip these things. So that brings us to the combat, which is a mixed bag. As I sort of said earlier, D has a lot of interesting options in combat, but the execution falls flat a lot of the time. Your main form of attack is D's sword, which can be unsheathed and sheathed with the triangle button. I like this in theory because I always like games where you can put away your weapons. I don't know what it is exactly, but it makes me feel like I'm more in control or in the role of that character, being able to choose violence or not, even though the game's objective is clearly violence. Pressing circle attacks and timing your button presses allows D to perform a combo of up to 3 attacks, and that's pretty straightforward. Now, before I start really picking apart the combat, let's break down some of the more innovative aspects of D's mechanics. First of all, we have our HP meter in the top left. Pointing that out directly after that last sentence is pretty underwhelming, but bear with me. Below that is the VP meter, which stands for Vampire Points. D's dhampiric nature has him vacillating between his humanity and his vampirism, and it's neat how they incorporate this into the gameplay. VP is constantly draining at a pretty slow pace. It's replenished when D attacks enemies and is splashed with their blood. You have 2 forms of healing items, human-made potions and vampiric blood pills. When the VP meter is low, meaning D is closer to his humanity, potions recover more of his health and also take away more of the VP meter. When the VP meter is high, meaning he's closer to his vampire nature, blood pills heal more and raise the VP meter.
Using a potion when VP is high or a blood pill when it's low will make each item less effective, so you need to keep an eye on the meter level. VP doesn't affect D's physical strength, but it does affect his magical powers. On the bottom left of the screen is a magic meter. Pressing select swaps between 3 different abilities. The red flame icon performs different magic attacks by pressing the square button and consuming one of the 3 bars of the meter. When D's VP meter is near full, the attack is a volley of powerful, homing fireballs. When the VP meter is near halfway full, he'll emit several beams of energy that will wrap around opponents and do continuous damage for a time. When the VP meter is low, an orb of dark energy will freeze an enemy in place, which is actually one of the most useful magical attacks. Pressing select cycles to 2 other abilities. The green sparkles are healing magic. Press square to consume one of the bars of the magic meter and completely heal D's HP. The blue vortex is the left hand's inhale ability. After weakening an enemy, you can press square and absorb that foe, which replenishes a bit of the magic bar. The more powerful the enemy, the more your magic will refill. Those big spider-like enemies, for example, actually don't die. They'll revive after a few seconds when you beat them. The only way to completely get rid of them is to absorb them. I wish they would have made use of this mechanic more often in gameplay, but this is the only enemy that acts like this. At the beginning of the game, you'll also have a silhouette of D next to the magic bar. This means that when you die, D's left hand will resurrect you on the spot, and you'll avoid a game over. After resurrection, the silhouette will disappear, and if you die again, that's when you'll have to reload a save. But if you refill your magic meter completely by absorbing enemies, you'll regain the resurrection skill. This whole system and all of these attacks and abilities are really cool.
You're also completely invulnerable when performing those actions, whether it be magic, healing, or absorbing enemies. So you can take care of troublesome opponents in a group by weakening them first and absorbing them without having to worry about other enemies getting in cheap hits. Again, oddly forgiving. Also, with careful management of your magic meter and making generous use of the inhale mechanic, you can keep yourself healed without using consumables for most of the game, allowing them to be saved for bosses or emergencies where you benefit most from their instant effects. Other consumables include elemental stones that refill 1 bar of the magic meter, as well as wooden darts that are most effective for dealing with hard-to-hit flying enemies, flashbangs that freeze every enemy on screen in place for several seconds, incredibly useful for those stupid sword-wielding demons, and hand grenades, which were the most useless item. You throw them with square and have to press square again to detonate them. More often than not, the explosion would end up missing, so I hardly ever use them. Another forgiving aspect of the game is the ability to save anywhere. Just open the menu and press the triangle button to save or load your game. When loading, you'll always be put at the entrance of the room you saved in, and any enemies within will respawn, even if you killed them before saving. The game actually respawns enemies whenever you transition between doors, a la Castlevania. It's a bit annoying, but because of Dee's swift run speed and ability to jump, it's not difficult to outmaneuver those you don't feel like dealing with. So at this point, you're probably thinking, hey, this game doesn't sound so bad. Actually seems pretty badass. Or maybe not, I don't know, I'm not about to try to get inside the head of every degenerate who watches my videos. Either way, that's why I wanted to go through all of the good stuff up front, because now we need to talk about the way you'll be approaching combat for most of the game, which is with Dee's sword. And it's not even that the actual melee fighting is bad, it's a combination of the poor movement controls, terrible camera angles, and lack of feedback. Like, when you actually land hits, it feels okay, but there's so many times where you'll just whiff, because it's hard to gauge your spatial positioning thanks to awkward camera placement. If you're running forward and press triangle, Dee will perform a quick draw slash that will most of the time instantly lock him on to an enemy in his path. Only most of the time though. Having a lock-on system is better than having none, but it's very finicky here. When locked on, a red eye icon appears on the top right of the screen. In the options, auto lock is turned on by default, but it's like a 50-50 chance if it's gonna work or not. It's honestly better to turn it off and lock on manually. You press L2 while your sword is drawn, and swap targets with R2. But even locked on, Dee will sometimes attack in the wrong direction, and you'll need to maneuver him around to actually face the enemy. Enemy animations and feedback when landing hits also looks and feels weak. The same goes for when Dee gets hit as well. None of this feels like it matches up with your abilities and what Dee is capable of, which is why I was saying at the beginning of the video that I wish this would have come out after Devil May Cry. At least then it might have had the opportunity to try to steal some of that game's tricks, even if it almost certainly wouldn't have pulled them off as well. Dee can perform these little evasive hops by double tapping either left, right, or back on the D-pad. The problem is, the distance he covers almost never outranges enemy attacks, so even if you time it right, you're almost always going to get hit. Despite there being invincibility frames while inhaling enemies and casting magic, there don't seem to be any while performing evasive maneuvers. Either that or the window is incredibly small, rendering them pretty much useless. Pressing R1 has Dee hold up his cape to guard. A few times in the movies, and several times in the books, Dee's cape is shown to have sort of a life of its own and the ability to defend him from attacks, even explosions. So the game incorporates that. The problem is, only certain attacks can be guarded against, and the game isn't very consistent with it. Lots of projectile attacks can be blocked, but some can't. It's really trial and error. Some other gameplay things to mention: there are 3 difficulty settings which affect the amount of damage Dee and enemies dish out, as well as health pools. I found the normal setting to be pretty easy though, because of the healing magic and the sheer amount of healing items you find in the game. I also don't think it's worth playing on hard because the combat isn't great, and there's no reward for it, but if you want to, hey, knock yourself out. Dee performs a quick turn by pressing L2 and R2 together. This is sometimes useful during combat when Dee doesn't lock on properly, but mostly just for convenience while exploring. Another weird quirk of the controls is actually selecting consumable items. You open the menu by pressing start, and you can use potions, blood pills, and elemental stones directly from there. But if you leave them highlighted, they'll still be selected when you return to gameplay. On the bottom right of the screen is an icon that usually shows D's left hand to use your magic abilities. But with an item selected from the menu, that will then be displayed there. A lot of the time it's difficult to pay attention to that though, so you'll not notice and then in the heat of combat press square to use inhale and accidentally waste a healing item. The reason it works like this is because the sub-weapons, wooden darts, flashbangs, and hand grenades, need to be highlighted in the menu so you can then use them with square. You need to remember to press select to switch back to left hand mode. And sometimes it's unresponsive. I'll be mashing select and nothing will change. It's a clunky system. Also, circle is attack, but circle's also the interact or confirm button. So there are times where you'll have your sword out and be trying to enter a door, but D will just try to kill it instead of going through it. But then there are other times when you can enter rooms just fine with your sword out. Also, D always loads into the next room with his sword sheathed, even if you left the previous room with your sword unsheathed, which can leave you vulnerable if there are enemies right on the other side. And then there's this one room where your sword combos just don't work, and no matter how you try to time your button presses, D only performs the first, weakest slash of his combo. It's weird, just a bunch of little programming issues and inconsistencies. But even with all of this jank, I gotta say, I still kind of like this game. It's not good, and there's a lot of wasted potential, but there's something about it. The actual exploration is straightforward. It never gets overly complex, but does just enough to keep things engaging. A lot of the castle is locked off to you and opens up after finding specific keys and items, after solving little puzzles or accomplishing tasks and triggering certain events. You get maps of each floor which highlight where you are and what areas you've yet to explore, which makes navigation a breeze. The whole overall gameplay reminds me of Galarians. Another late PS1 game that uses survival horror design, but aesthetically and gameplay-wise does something different with it. If you want more of my thoughts on Galarians, you can check out the video I made a couple years ago. And like Vampire Hunter D, I pose the question, would it have been better with a more action-based design ethos? Well, in Galarian's case, probably not, because they tried that with its sequel, Galarian's Ash, and that game is hot garbage. Oh, it's bad. It's so easy to make the joke Galarian's ass, but that's always what comes to mind when I think about that game. I covered the first almost 2.5 years ago, and I'm still working up the nerve to play the second. Someday. I know it exists. I've played it. We'll get there, when I'm really desperate. But yeah, anyway, I think Vampire Hunter D could have been better, but I still like this janky little mid-game that could. So, for the next part of this video, I'm going to be looking at the game's story and comparing it to the stories of the book and film. So needless to say, spoilers for all three ahead. If you'd like to experience any or all of these things on your own, you can skip to this time to get my final thoughts on the game and the Vampire Hunter D franchise as a whole. But if you'd rather keep listening to me talking, making myself lightheaded by obsessively breaking down the many differences in the narratives of these three pieces of media, then just keep watching. I'm assuming the majority of people who've stuck around are most familiar with the film's version of events, but even if you're not, we'll start with a quick rundown to kick this section off. Bloodlust's story sees Dee hired by the Elborn family to rescue their daughter, Charlotte, after she's been kidnapped by a vampire named Baron Meyer-Link. However, another group of hunters, known as the Marcus clan, consisting of brothers Borgoff, Kyle, Nolt, and Grove, along with their sister Layla, have also been hired for the same purpose. This puts the three groups in direct conflict, and the first 2/3 of the movie is spent chasing Meyer-Link's carriage across the frontier. At one point, Meyer-Link stops at the village of Barbaroi, a community of mutants and demon hybrids, and hires 3 members of the village as bodyguards for the remainder of their journey. These 3 are Mashira, Caroline, and Benge. So now, both the Marcus clan and Dee have another set of antagonists to deal with on their demon death chase. You like how I wove in the title of the novel there? Not at all a clunky attempt to transition into talking about the differences between the book and the movie's plots. One thing I realized by watching Kawajiri's films and reading some of the source material for them is how much he likes to deviate from the original stories. Demon City Shinjuku was a great example, taking the novel's world, characters, and events and crafting something almost totally unique. In Bloodlust, he sticks more closely to the overall flow of the novel, with several notable changes and one huge addition. Starting with some of the more subtle alterations, Old Man Elborn and his son are inventions of the film. In the book, the old man who hires Dee and the Marcus clan to rescue his daughter is unnamed. In fact, the daughter is also unnamed in the book. She was given the name Charlotte for the film. At a certain point early on, Layla attempts to attack Meyer Link and is injured. Afterwards, Dee patches her up, and a mutual respect grows between the two as the story progresses. But the flavor of Dee and Layla's relationship is slightly different between the book and the movie. They start off as antagonists in both, and while Bloodlust keeps them platonic, book Layla falls in love with Dee. This is an annoying trope in a lot of Vampire Hunter D books. The female main character almost always ends up falling in love with Dee, who never gives a shit because he's a hundreds, perhaps thousands of years old, constantly roaming dhampir. The books try to explain it by describing Dee as having an alluring supernatural aura of beauty that attracts both men and women, but the whole female lead character always falling for him gets old pretty fast. So I much prefer the more subtle way the movie handles Layla and Dee. A whole scene in the middle of Bloodlust has Dee visiting a frontier town to buy a new cybernetic horse after his is destroyed. While purchasing a new mount, the town's sheriff and a bunch of locals confront him and tell him to get out of town, but the old man who owns the stables stands up for him. Sometime in the past, when the old man was just a kid, Dee saved the village from a noble. And it's revealed that Layla overhears this whole conversation, further cementing her respect for the hunter. This entire series of events was added to the movie. The first main character death in Bloodlust and Demon Death Chase is Nolt, the second oldest of the Marcus brothers. But how he dies is different. In the movie, he's killed at the hands of the Barbaroi bodyguard Benge, who has the power to dive into shadows. Benge is then killed by Borgoff and Kyle in a pretty cool action sequence out in the middle of the desert. In the book, Nolt is killed by Dee, after Dee takes a tumble off a cliff into a river. Nolt believes Dee will be easy prey after being submerged in water, but unfortunately for him, that's not the case. And Benge is also defeated by Dee. A major subplot involving the other two Barbaroi bodyguards betraying Meyer Link and Charlotte is completely dropped from Bloodlust. Their supernatural traits are changed as well. In the film, Caroline is an undefined creature that has the ability to control trees, like some twisted version of a dryad or druid. And Mashira is a werewolf that also has a wolf face protruding from his stomach. We'll find out why when we look at his book version. They both die faithfully trying to protect Meyer Link and Charlotte from the hunters. In the book, it's revealed that Caroline is a dhampir, like Dee. It's explained that she can turn any living thing into her minion by biting it, even non-sentient living things like plants. And Mashira is a symbiote, same as Dee's left hand. Although instead of just existing within its host's limb, Mashira takes over the entire body. Caroline develops an obsession with the Baron, while Mashira feels the same toward the daughter. But while Caroline wants to make Meyer Link fall in love with her, Mashira just wants to hear the girl. They hatch a plan together to get what they want. Mashira successfully convinces the daughter to leave the refuge of the carriage to enjoy the sunlight by telling her this may be her last chance to view the sunset.
He then springs into action.
They're interrupted by a huntsman who just happened to be in the nearby woods. The daughter at first believes she's saved, but upon seeing Meyer Link's carriage nearby and putting two and two together, the huntsman realizes she's just a filthy vampire lover. His words, not mine. Mashida ends up taking control of the huntsman's body with the worm-like appendage that protrudes from his stomach, which is his true form. They make a nod to this in Bloodlust with that wolf face on his stomach, I guess. His pursuit of the daughter goes awry when he runs into Dee and Layla in the woods she escapes into, and we'll see how he meets his ultimate end much later. Meanwhile, Caroline is taken out similarly to how it happens in the movie. But the confrontation between Layla, Caroline, and Dee is much more prolonged in the book. The other big and disturbing subplot that's dropped from the film involves the non-consensual, incestuous relationship between Layla and her brothers. The Marcus brothers overall are much more ruthless and callous in the novel, while the movie casts them in a more sympathetic light and shows they actually care for one another, and not at all in an incestuous way. A few other changes are made to how the Marcus brothers meet their ends.
Kyle is turned by Caroline and put down by his brother Borgoff, instead of dying in a fight against Mashida on the bridge leading to Keith Castle. Borgoff's death is quite different, but we'll look at that more when we discuss the game's story. Grove, the one brother I haven't talked about, suffers from an undisclosed illness that leaves him bedridden. He's able to astral project, though, and becomes an especially powerful yet out-of-control spirit of destruction. The methods involved to get him into this state differ between Demon Deathchase and Bloodlust. In the film, he's injected with a special drug. In the novel, he needs to be put in an emotionally agitated state, which is typically accomplished by forcing him to watch one of the other brothers rear Layla, inciting his jealousy, which is very fucked up to say the least. I mentioned the movie included one big addition though, so let's talk about that. It's revealed in the book and movie that Charlotte, or the daughter, is a willing participant in Meyer Link's abduction. The two are in love and attempting to escape by spaceship to the City of the Night, a vampiric refuge on the moon. In Bloodlust, they're heading to Keith Castle, at the invitation of the vampiric stewardess Carmilla, who also confirms the castle houses a space shuttle. Also, slight tangent here, in Bloodlust, Meyer Link's name is written like this. However, if you look closely at the letter from Carmilla, she's written Meyer Ling. And in Demon Deathchase, the English translator Sean Leahy has chosen to render his name as Meyer Ling. His name is also written differently in Japanese between the film and the novel. Bloodlust gives him the name Maeru Rinku, with this equal sign denoting a space. Sometimes Japanese does this to indicate spaces between foreign names. Usually it's a dot, here it's an equal sign. Not completely uncommon. But in Demon Deathchase, his name is Maeru Rinku, without a space. So I don't know what this guy's name is actually supposed to be, but I've been going with the rendition from the film and the game, Meyer Link. Anyway, tangent over. The big thing here is Keith Castle and Carmilla are both additions to the film. In the book, Meyer Link and the daughter are heading to a place called the Claiborne States, the site of an old spaceport. Meyer Link has been tracking rumors of the spaceport's operation for years. He's heard there are some still functioning space shuttles that will carry them to the moon, where they can finally live together without interference. So, the entire last act of Bloodlust is a totally original turn of the story. This is important because the game, being based on the film, takes place entirely within Keith Castle. The game opens with a few stills from the film of Charlotte's father offering Dee the job of rescuing his daughter from the clutches of Meyer Link.
My daughter was kidnapped by a vampire. Please, help us. I have $500,000 for you now, and I will pay you another $2 million when you bring my daughter home safely.
With the way inflation is headed, in 10,000 years that probably amounts to like 5 cents. Next, we get a full CG cutscene of Dee arriving on the castle grounds, with clear signs of a battle having taken place. Using his left hand, Dee uncovers the details of what happened. The Marcus clan arrived in their armored battle vehicle and fought a couple of gargoyles that sound like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. And the audio balancing here is shredding my eardrums. I actually reduced the gain for all of you by about 10 decibels. Oh, that's awful. But they must have really thought it sounded good because they use it about 3 times throughout this cutscene. Please don't do it again. when they dragged it out in the last one. The game chooses to disregard all of the events leading to the arrival at Keith Castle, which is probably a good thing since this was released about a year or so before most people would have gotten to see the film. I wonder what Japanese fans who read Demon Death Chase would have thought about the game's story and setting though. Die-hard fans would have probably been aware another film was in production, but seeing this new castle setting and a new antagonist mixed with familiar characters was probably a bit jarring. Most English fans wouldn't have been able to read Demon Death Chase yet, so there'd be slightly less confusion. Side note, in the English manual there's an advertisement for the quote, new Vampire Hunter D the movie, coming soon to theaters nationwide, in the back. They hadn't even come up with the Bloodlust subtitle yet, apparently. Despite the choice to set the game during Bloodlust's final act, playing through it doesn't actually spoil the film. The events that take place in Keith Castle are completely different between the two. Certain characters, namely Benge and Mashira, are still alive here, even though they've already died by this point in Bloodlust's story. The game also has 3 endings depending on different choices you make throughout, and even the ending that most closely resembles the films doesn't play out quite the same way. The only character who's omitted from the game is Caroline. I'm not sure why she wasn't included. Poor Caroline. Sweet Caroline. Sorry, I don't know what that has to do with anything. After that opening cinematic, the game starts proper, and Dee's left hand lays out the stakes of the story. Oh my god, dude, you might want to get that checked out. Jeez, even the toaster hands in Final Fantasy VII are better than whatever swollen mess that is.
So, there's Maya Link and the Marcus brothers who are after him. All the pieces are in place.
So it seems.
A short while after being set loose to explore the castle, Dee hears voices coming from one of the rooms. He listens outside as Layla confronts Meyer Link, deciding not to enter until after the woman has been knocked out by the vampire. Or killed by the vampire. He doesn't know.
Very well. I will shred you to pieces.
This honestly isn't at all at odds with his personality. In the books, he's often described as being aloof and uncaring toward other characters. After a brief and almost hilariously dumb boss fight with Meyer Link, setting the stage for how future boss fights in the game will play out, we're given a choice on how to deal with the unconscious Layla. We can give her a potion from our inventory so she can recover, or choose to just leave her there. Based on what I mentioned before about the endings being dependent on choices and actions during the game, you'd probably assume this is one of those important decisions. I mean, a menu option pops up and everything. But no, it isn't. Surprisingly, this choice affects nothing. If you give her a potion, you'll get a cutscene now showing Dee and Layla's introduction. But if not, after leaving the room and returning, you'll find she's disappeared, and you'll get a similar cutscene a little bit later. Either way, after this, in a room on the 2nd floor of the castle, Dee runs into a young vision of Carmilla, who bids him to follow her through the large mirror in the room. This is a really cool moment, and is a nod to a similar scene in Bloodlust where Charlotte is drawn into a mirror. Subsequently, Carmilla traps each of the characters in illusions, which is one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. Illusions, psi attacks as they're sometimes referred to, and also closed or pocket dimensions are used frequently throughout the Vampire Hunter D novels as traps against D and other characters. And there's an interesting cycle of influences happening here, especially when we see the illusion D is shown in the film. I mentioned earlier that this scene is heavily inspired by Symphony of the Night. In that game, Alucard gets drawn into an illusion where he witnesses the death of his mother at the hands of an angry mob for her love affair with Dracula. The vision is twisted in an attempt to manipulate and psychically damage Alucard. But it's funny that Vampire Hunter D was the first source to depict Dracula's son as a dhampir, which Symphony of the Night then pulls from for its reconfiguring of Alucard's backstory, and it also takes from it the whole psi attack idea. Then Bloodlust takes Symphony of the Night's illusion attack using a memory of the dhampir's mother and reinterprets that. It's like these subtle nods between creators. Going back to the game, D only follows Carmilla through the mirror. There he finds Nolt dead in some sci-fi inspired back room of the castle, and then returns from the mirror realm. I feel like it's a missed opportunity to have a section of the game take place in this illusory world, but it's still a neat moment nonetheless. In another room on the opposite side of the second floor, D finds Charlotte. But this too turns out to be an illusion, and D falls for the old trapdoor in the floor trick. Alright, no need to get so smug about it, not like you were the first villain to think that one up. And no, I'm not going to dive into the rabbit hole of trying to figure out the first piece of fiction to use that trope. I leave that one up to one of you. D, being the paragon of dark grace that he is, floats easily to the ground in the castle's sewer system, and Left Hand's dialogue gets cut off.
It's incredible that you're not hurt after that fall, but now you'll need to find the passage to return us to the surface.
Nice. The sewers are home to a really simple moving platform puzzle that's deceptively annoying thanks to the constantly changing camera angles and floaty jump mechanics. There are also enemies that can poison D, as well as semi-hidden spike traps that jut out of the walls. As mentioned, the water also hurts you, but the damage ticks are extremely generous. Still, this is just another obnoxious video game sewer stage in a long line of other obnoxious video game sewer stages that feels pretty unnecessary. After exiting, we find ourselves in the castle basement and have to perform another simple puzzle, moving these boxes around with D's telekinetic powers. These only get used twice in the whole game. The first time is up in the castle to move these statues into place and reveal passwords for a couple of locked doors. I didn't even bother mentioning it earlier because it's such a nothing moment. And here too, it's just kind of whatever, a little obstacle to break up the fighting. Upon completing that though, we enter a large crypt and meet Borgoff, who's just found his brother Kyle in one of the coffins here with all the blood drained from his body. He becomes suspicious of D and his dhampir nature, wondering if it wasn't him who killed and drained his brothers.
I won't take any more chances. I'll show you how the Marcus brothers fight.
Yo, sick moves, bro. Alright, stand still, you fucker. Yeah, so we've got to block Borgoff's projectiles with our cape and try to get close enough to slash him. He'll sometimes throw a kick if you get too close, but it's necessary to sacrifice a bit of HP just to land a hit and get this fight over with. Afterwards, Borgoff just runs away. It's what he's good at. From here, we can finally leave the underground and make our way to the third floor of the castle, which acts as a sort of hub for the late game areas. We've collected a silver plate, which unlocks several doors in the main castle that were inaccessible on our first run through. So, you know what that means, a survival horror staple and everyone's favorite, backtracking. Because the map is so compact though, it's actually not that bad, and the central elevator on this octagonal third floor sends us back down to the main hall where we started the game, providing a nice shortcut. They even introduced new enemies into previously explored hallways. It's just too bad the combat isn't better to capitalize on that. We're searching for a key to the Sun Tower, which is in one of the newly unlocked rooms. Though once we've grabbed it and returned to the main hall, D finds the power's been cut and the elevator is no longer active. Down in the power control room, Meyer Link is standing in front of the panel, so we need to fight him again, and it's nearly identical to the first time we faced him. His only new move is tossing out these small, molecular vibro bombs, which he actually uses in the book and movie at one point. So, kind of neat to see them implemented here, even if they are incredibly annoying. He tosses out 3 in front of him, which explode with purple light and cause about 1/5 of our health bar of damage. He also turns into bats and teleports around. I got lucky and got him stun-locked in a corner. D still doesn't finish him off, though.
I wonder what is in there.
Huh, yeah, I wonder. With the power to the castle restored, D goes to head back to the elevator, but runs into Layla before even leaving the room. And we get Grove's obligatory cameo.
Grove!
Layla, the vampire killed everybody.
Who did it? Meyer Link?
No, not Meyer Link. Another vampire.
Okay, bye. Luckily, a cutscene takes us to the castle entrance where Layla informs us that Grove is dead, slashed in the back. Her brother drew the letter C on his bedsheet in blood as he was dying, a clue to who killed him, and a completely unnecessary detail. But yeah, so we pick things up at the castle entrance, and once we make it back to the 3rd floor, we use the sun tower key to access one of the branching hallways. However, D runs into Benge and gets his left hand cut off, and it flies out a nearby window. The slow motion, it lingers for so long. So now, missing a limb, we continue on. D has lost all of his magical abilities and his ability to revive himself. He can't even use his cape to guard anymore. The game doesn't really throw any unique challenges at us, despite our lack of abilities, and the time we spend in this state is very short. We just keep heading forward and go to the top of the tower where we face off against Benge, one-handed. He doesn't run away nearly as much as Borgoff, but has the ability to disappear into his own shadow to teleport around the room.
Who are you? You are not an ordinary dunpeel.
I am just an ordinary dunpeel.
Shakespearean.
Benge flips away and flips a nearby switch, turning on an artificial sun. We are in the sun tower after all. He then strikes down D in his weakened state and drives a stake through his heart.
Now we have only the last one to get rid of, Meyer Link.
Interesting that Benge says they need to get rid of Meyer Link here. Perhaps this is maintaining the plot line from the novel where the Barbaroi betray him. It's never really followed through on though, so who knows.
It's been a while since I had a major role. Talk about good timing. Leela. Leela!
Oh my, a hand is talking to me.
Hello, I live in Dee's left hand.
In Dee's left hand?
Leela, Dee is in trouble. Take me to him now.
Dee's in trouble? All right, show me where he is.
I didn't think it was necessary to make any comments about that whole scene. Pretty much speaks for itself. With Dee's left hand in tow, we take control of Layla for a bit. She's armed with her gun, which is powerful, but she can't move while aiming or shooting. She can also only make use of potions and antidotes. The game really turns into Resident Evil for a bit here. We need to get back to the passageway on the 3rd floor where Dee was attacked. On the way, Layla runs into Charlotte, just wandering around the castle on her own. She tells Layla to leave her alone.
I will not go home. Meyer told me we wouldn't need to be fugitives anymore once we got to this castle.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, well,
gotta go. Of course, Dee isn't still around, so Left Hand suggests going to the cemetery where Dee might have been buried. I was about to ask how he knew Dee was defeated, but he is a symbiote living within his body. Even if the part of the body he's currently in has been dismembered, I suppose there's still some connection. It was so nice of Benge to take the time to bury Dee's body. What a swell guy.
I sense Dee's spirit. He must be buried somewhere in this cemetery.
Where is he?
I don't know, why don't you try checking that body-shaped mound of dirt right in front of you?
We're almost there.
What is that sound effect?
Oh no. He has a stake through his chest. Not even a dunpeel can survive this.
Oh, Layla, you poor dumb idiot. I guess you've never seen the first Vampire Hunter D movie. So the Left Hand does its thing and revives Dee.
Maybe it would have been better off for him to stay buried, but I still want to live in him for a while.
Oh god, that mouth is so gross. After Dee comes to, Layla recounts what Charlotte told her about not wanting to be rescued. Layla runs off to search for the girl, while Dee goes for a rematch with Benge, who's still just hanging around at the top of the sun tower. With his left hand reattached, Dee has nothing to fear from the artificial sun. In fact, he just eats it.
That was delicious, but not enough to fill my belly.
This is a bad dream.
And so we face off against Benge again, who doesn't gain any new abilities, but teleports around more often, making the fight more annoying. And he dies pretty unceremoniously. There's not even a cutscene after, just his dead body left on the floor. Oh well. Afterwards, we head to the 4th floor of the castle, which leads to the Moon Tower. We need to make a bridge appear by hitting these spinning, color-changing crystals, stopping them on the same color, which is a lot harder than it looks, because there are about 6 colors that rapidly change, and Dee's sword attack takes a second or two to wind up and connect, so it's difficult to time. And sometimes it doesn't connect at all, even though it looks like it should. Anyway, I just kept slashing until eventually it worked, which took about 3 minutes. The other side of the bridge leads to Charlotte's chambers, where Dee meets her in the flesh for the first time. Meyer is sleeping in a coffin nearby. It's hard to keep track whether it's day or night during the events of this game. But when Dee turns his back, Mashira, whose name has been altered to Machira in the English versions, bursts in and steals Charlotte away. Dee follows, and here is where the first major decision that determines the ending of the game happens. There are 3 doors in this room. One of them leads to a small chamber with an unconscious Charlotte. If we enter that room and check on Charlotte first, then exit, we'll fight Machida and be put on the path to the good ending. If, however, we leave the current room through either of the 2 other doors, we'll reach dead ends and be forced to re-enter this room. The fight with Machida will trigger, and we'll need to check on Charlotte after. In that order of events, Layla appears and takes Charlotte back to her chambers to watch over her, and we'll be put on the path to the normal ending. Our decision also slightly alters what happens next. If we checked on Charlotte, then fought Machida, we'll need to head out to the balcony to fight him in his transformed werewolf state. We also get a special cutscene of him transforming, and after the fight, when we go back to check on Charlotte, she's disappeared from the room. If we fought Machida first though, when we check on Charlotte, Layla appears. A cutscene takes the trio back to Charlotte's chambers where Layla says she'll watch over the unconscious girl. Meyerlink's coffin is now empty and we can check it to find a letter from Carmilla promising him the use of her spaceship, presumably the same letter he reads at one point in the film. Also, even though Machida says to follow him after the first fight, he doesn't appear on the balcony, and we don't fight his second form. Not yet, anyway. Either way, this other key we get in the tower needs to be taken to the control room on the 3rd floor. It unlocks the last few rooms in the main castle, where we need to collect a few more MacGuffins before reaching the endgame. Before that though, after inserting the key, some monitors in the control room show us another part of the castle. Who Dee sees in the security footage changes depending on what ending path we're on. For the normal ending, we see Charlotte, and on the path to the good ending, we see Layla. When attempting to leave the control room, Dee is confronted by Carmilla. After introducing herself, Dee's left hand can't believe it. Carmilla was reportedly destroyed by the Vampire King, aka Dee's father, aka Dracula, but shh, nobody knows that.
Many vampires were jealous of my glory, and they had to spread that kind of rumor.
So, what do you want from me?
I invited Meyer Link to lend him a hand. I want you to leave them alone.
I do not understand. What is your motive, Carmilla?
I'll leave that up to your imagination. But if you're going to intervene between those two, you'll need to face me first. Do you really think your pathetic sword can harm me?
We fight Carmilla, and as she says, and Dee's left hand warns, she can't be hurt by Dee's sword. We need to wait for her to toss out several glowing red orbs, which remain stationary for a short time before disappearing. What we're meant to do is position ourselves and hit these orbs back in her direction to damage her. But she's also teleporting around the room. With these controls, it is just as frustrating as it sounds. Also, if we accidentally bump into them, we take damage and they disappear. Some of Carmilla's attacks can be blocked with the cape, but she usually follows that up with an unblockable slice attack that targets Dee's legs. And you don't have enough time to jump over it after guarding because of the animation where Dee flings his cape away. It's a mess. Most annoying fight in the game. Afterwards, she disappears, and Dee's left hand informs that the location of the security footage was the spaceport hangar, which can be accessed in the top left of the octagonal third floor. And here is the second and final decision which determines our ending. In the room right before the hangar, there's a side path with a gun lying on the ground. It's Layla's weapon. Somehow she dropped it. If we pick up the gun, after dispatching a couple of monsters attacking her, we'll hand it over, keeping us on either the normal or good ending path, depending on our decisions fighting Machida in the Tower of the Moon. If we don't pick up the gun though, we're put on the bad ending path. So let's finish out the game on the normal path. That's what I got on my first playthrough while capturing footage, and because that's the one that most closely resembles Bloodlust's ending. We'll double back to the good and bad ones afterwards, and I'll talk about the book's ending too. So after returning Layla's gun, we backtrack through the castle again. There's something suspicious about the large portrait of Carmilla in the entrance hall near the elevator, and when Dee's left hand investigates, he senses a secret passageway behind it. Then 4 rectangular impressions are revealed. These accommodate 4 plates, each representing one of the elements, so we need to go around and collect those. The first 3 we gather from checking the last of the rooms that are now accessible in the main castle area. Each room has some simple trials that need to be overcome, like music box puzzles matching the melody that plays with some switches to unlock a door. There's the dark room full of platforms over a bottomless pit that I mentioned earlier. Hitting the hovering balls of light illuminates small areas for a short period of time so you can see where you need to jump. The last plaque just requires placing 2 gems that you gather along the way outside of the fire tower, which isn't even a full area. It's just a room where you take the plate of fire. After placing the first 3 plates, Layla appears, as does Borgoff, who's been injured.
Borgoff, you're alive!
Yeah, the owner of this castle is a hideous monster. How about working together?
She took you in, didn't she?
Borgoff, what are you doing?
Don't come any closer!
Have you lost your mind? You're taking your own sister as a hostage.
No, stop!
My sister, eh? Family means nothing to me anymore. I'm not a human now.
Nice of him to moonwalk out of the way to let his sister by. So Dee and Borgoff fight again. The battle is hardly changed. Borgoff still shows off how the Marcus brothers fight, by running around like an asshole. The only dangerous new move he has is one where he'll point his crossbow and fire 3 bolts straight into the air. They come down in a triangular pattern and create a cage of lightning. If Dee's caught in it, he can't move and takes a large amount of damage from the bolts. It fades away after a few seconds. After defeating Borgoff, we find the final plate of earth on his body, and as Dee turns his back, Borgoff rises to shoot him, but Layla shoots first.
To hell!
Layla insists on tagging along to face Carmilla, but Dee uses his left hand to render her unconscious.
This is for you.
She'll be pretty mad when she wakes up.
Beyond the portrait, through a passageway, Dee finds Meyer Link impaled on a wall. He reveals Carmilla has the same motives as in the film. She was killed by the sacred ancestor thousands of years ago, staked through the heart with his sword. Yet her power has allowed her spirit to continue to roam Caith Castle. She lured Meyer Link here, promising him the use of her space shuttle so she could extract Charlotte's virgin blood and revive her own body. Dee frees Meyer and confronts the spirit of Carmilla in the next room. She tries to sway Dee over to her side, but nothing doing.
You vampires are destined to perish. Accept your own fate and return to the darkness.
Yeah, Dee, that didn't work the first time either. Before we enter the next room, though, Machida appears in his transformed state, and we need to defeat him before moving on. Like most bosses, he runs around a lot, and by this point we've figured out to just be patient and try to get him into a corner. Machida dies, again pretty abruptly, and that's that. Time to fight Carmilla.
Charlotte.
This is the sword which sealed me into 5,000 years of long sleep. The sword of that cursed king of the vampires. Oh, what a wonderful feeling.
Carmilla transforms into this giant plant-like creature, and there are 2 phases to the fight. In the first, we need to hang back and wait for her to slam her gangly plant arms into the ground. Attacking them both 3 times will hack them off. After her arms are gone, her body can be attacked. She's up on this pedestal, which makes it awkward. Only like every other one of Dee's sword slashes will connect. You want to get right up in front of her, because she launches this transparent sphere that traps Dee in place, but he can still attack. She also throws out 6 black orbs that can be blocked with Dee's cape. So the fight goes. Just stay in front of her, slash away, block when the 6 orbs come out, and repeat. Sometimes she'll do a laser attack if we get a little too far away from her, but the key is to stay close. Eventually, she goes down.
Power. This strong? Who in the world are you?
That sword going like 2 frames a second stabs her right in the ass.
My, this sword is supposed to... Are you the son of the Vampire King and a human?
What the fuck? So after all that, Dee just leaves Charlotte, but Meyer Link swoops in. Too late though, as Charlotte dies.
I have no regrets. I am happy, even if it was for just a short while, dreaming of the trip to the farthest stars with you.
It's not a dream. I will get you there.
Meyer.
Layla saves Dee yet again. Thank you, those sword demons are a real pain in the ass to deal with. Dee is then transported to the hangar area and needs to face off against Meyer Link, the final boss. Carmilla and her two phases feel more like the actual final boss, but Meyer Link here, in this third encounter, can be a real bitch. I actually died to him the first time and had to reload a save and fight Carmilla again. You get the chance to save after killing her, but honestly, I kind of forgot about the Meyer Link fight, and also, when it started, I was just like, this'll be whatever, just for the story. But nope. He throws even more of those Vibra Bomb things in this fight, making him such a nuisance. He freaking spams them, my god. Also, after teleporting, he'll send out this shockwave that needs to be jumped over. When Meyer Link, I didn't even notice that in the first two boss fights. The boss names are written in English in the Japanese version, so blame them for that one. What is it with all the names being messed up in this thing? Anyway, when Meyer Link's health bar is gone, Dee stops attacking, takes Charlotte's ring as proof of her death to collect his bounty, and leaves Meyer to take her body and board the space shuttle.
Tortured and killed, the vampire and the woman. I'll take this ring to her father as proof of her death.
Let's go, Charlotte, to the city of the night, to our journey to the furthest stars together.
Dee and Layla escape the crumbling castle and watch as the ship blasts off. So that entire sequence from Dee and Meyer Link's fight to the end where Dee and Layla watch the spaceship depart is similar to the film's ending. Layla says she's heading up north to meet a man that she once knew, someone who said he'd always wait for her. We don't get the epilogue where decades later, Dee watches over Layla's burial and runs into her granddaughter, who recognizes him from her grandmother's stories. Going back to the good ending though, where Layla doesn't appear in the moon tower and we fight Machida out on the balcony, the rest of the game plays out exactly the same, except we'll see Layla in the security footage instead of Charlotte. After the fight with Meyer Link, Dee takes Charlotte's ring and Meyer takes her aboard the space shuttle. But as they're ascending the lift, we get an extra bit of dialogue from her to show that she still lives.
Yes, Meyer. Together. Forever.
Dee and Layla escape from the castle, and instead of talking about the man up north waiting for her, she asks Dee if he maybe wants to travel to the next town with her.
You want to go to town together?
Now, no matter our prior decisions, if we choose not to pick up Layla's gun after saving her from the monsters, Layla says she needs to stay and rest a while. When Borgoff appears later on, instead of taking Layla hostage, he just kicks her out of the way.
Get out of my way!
Brutal. After defeating him, he gets up, but doesn't try to attack Dee. Instead, he shambles off screen, picks up Layla, and runs off. Left Hand reminds us that finding Carmilla is more important than chasing after the two of them, so after unpinning Meyer Link from the wall and entering the next room, we see Charlotte's body lying there, and Carmilla appears. Usually at this point, Charlotte's body is floating in the next room, part of Carmilla's ritual. After the short talk with Carmilla, Dee moves Charlotte's body out of the way and heads forward. Now, Layla's body is being used in the ritual, supposedly having been delivered by Borgoff. After defeating Carmilla, Dee attempts to save Layla, but she dies.
When I die, will you bring some flowers to my grave? Silly, isn't it? You probably don't care, but...
I promise, if there is a place to rest for the hunters.
Going out, we find Meyer Link carrying Charlotte away.
Sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen to you.
Don't worry about me. I have no regrets. I am happy, even if it was for just a short while, dreaming of the trip to the farthest stars with you.
It's not a dream. I will get you there.
We've got to get to the shuttle room, Dee. Hurry!
Usually when we exit this room, we're instantly transported to the shuttle dock, but we actually have to run all the way back to the elevator, which started to worry me at first. I thought we were going to have to backtrack all the way to the hangar on the 3rd floor. But when you reach the elevator, then it transports you. Whew. After the fight with Meyer Link, Dee still yields and takes Charlotte's ring, but as Meyer goes to pick her up...
Meyer!
You're all gonna die with me. Oh, men!
Maybe could have chosen some better dying words there, Borgoff.
Oh, men!
Afterwards, Left Hand informs us Charlotte followed Meyer Link in death. Dee escapes by himself, haunted by the voices of Meyer Link and Layla, and Carmilla's claim that she will awaken his true self. As the camera pans upwards, showing no space shuttle flying from the crumbling castle, Left Hand reminds Dee that things always seem to end this way, and their journey has just begun. Surprisingly, this ending most resembles the book's conclusion. Meyer Link and the daughter are not headed for Caith Castle. Their destination is the Claiborne States, and Carmilla doesn't exist in Demon Death Chase. When they finally arrive at the Claiborne States, they find the spaceport itself in ruins and all of the shuttles in disrepair, none of them usable. Dee and Meyer Link face off, and in the end, Dee lets him live. However, he's shot through the heart by Borgoff, not under Carmilla's control, but Mashida's. Remember, in the book, Mashida is a symbiote like Dee's Left Hand. Earlier on, Borgoff is gravely wounded in a confrontation with Meyer Link and left for dead in a forest, his body being devoured by man-eating insects called mints. Yum. Mashida finds him near death and takes over his body. He then travels to the Claiborne States and shoots Meyer Link. Dee and Mashida in Borgoff's body then face off, and Dee's Left Hand devours the other symbiote, which is the only way to kill one of their kind. During the commotion, Charlotte took Meyer Link's vampiric claw hand, which he can transform at will to use as a weapon, and stabs herself in the heart. This resolution is kind of hinted at in the final in-game cutscene when we see Meyer Link's hand on Charlotte's chest as Left Hand declares she's followed the vampire in death. Afterwards, Dee and Layla leave the Claiborne States, and Layla tells him she's heading north to the man who made a promise to wait for her. Dee, as always, departs in the opposite direction, parting ways with that novel's female lead and heading off to meet someone new in the next one. Vampire Hunter D is not a good game, but that doesn't stop it from being an interesting game, and even an enjoyable one when played in the right mindset. It has fascinating ideas with its magic system and absorbing enemies mechanic. Its story is intriguing. It's neat to see a different take on this narrative and these characters who have been presented in the novel and the film. The ways in which you achieve the different endings in the game and how those choices change subtle scenes throughout each ending path is well done. Dee himself is just an awesome main character. It feels cool to control him. Well, I mean, it feels cool to think of his avatar representing you in the context of the game. The actual controls are pretty terrible. And the combat itself could use a lot of work, especially in the feedback, enemy design, and their behaviors. I wish more of the boss fights didn't just boil down to your opponent running or teleporting away from you, but despite all of its shortcomings, I still went back and played through it a 4th time while writing the script and editing this video. And I had fun, for the most part. My tolerance for mediocre to bad older games may be higher than most who are watching this though, so take that comment with a grain of salt. I'm not saying this is some hidden gem on the PlayStation, God no, but it allowed me to ramble on about the Vampire Hunter D franchise for a couple hours and make some long-winded connections to Balkan mythology and other vampire media, so that's a win in my book. Speaking of which, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the Vampire Hunter D novels are still going. The 57th one, Akai Natsu no Mitsuyuki, Scarlet Summer Journey, which is actually volume 44 when accounting for the multi-part stories that have been published over the years, was just released in Japan in January 2026. It's the end of an era for the series, as it's the last to feature the black and white interior illustrations from Yoshitaka Amano. He'll still be painting the full-color covers at least, but I'm kind of disappointed. It was always a joy to stumble across a page illustrating some aspect of the story in Amano's signature wispy style. The latest English translation was the novel Gold Fiend, the 30th volume in the Western releases. The numbering is off between the English and Japanese series, because several of the multi-part books were combined into one volume in English. Gold Fiend itself is made up of 2 parts in Japanese and was released as one in the West in July 2024. This ended translator Sean Leahy's contract with Dark Horse Books, and as of the making of this video, there are currently no plans to release the next 19 novels that are still awaiting translation. Though Leahy has gone on record saying his goal is to translate the rest of the series, whether that's through Dark Horse or some other means. We can only hope. Vampire Hunter D has always been a series that I've felt has been neglected outside of the novels and wealth of Amano illustrations. There are 2 classic films, but there's so much material to work with. I often wonder why it never got a TV adaptation. There's a manga series with art by Saiko Takaki, whose work doesn't quite match the majesty of Yoshitaka Amano's, but it's still really good. Each volume is a direct adaptation of Kikuchi's novels, and you've been seeing panels from it throughout this video, especially when I was talking about the book stories. During the 2000s, Takaki penned 7 novels, which were translated into English as well, before suffering from an undisclosed illness and putting the series on hiatus. Another bout of bad news for fans. But then, in January 2025, lo and behold, a miracle. Takaki returned with the first part of the 8th Vampire Hunter D story, The Rose Princess. The second part, concluding the story, followed in January 2026, and it appears the manga will continue. Though as of right now, there are no plans for the English adaptation to continue. Again, we can only hope. A Western comic series, titled Message from Mars, was successfully funded on Kickstarter several years ago. It's a 5-issue series based on an unpublished short story called Message from Cecile that was never translated into English and was only given out as a prize to fans at a Japanese event. 3 issues have been completed, and according to an April 2026 update on the Kickstarter page, issue number 4 is currently in production. Only the first issue was ever widely available though, and everything else has been exclusive to Kickstarter backers. You can maybe find them floating around on eBay or other secondhand sellers, but it's pretty rare. I haven't read it, but from reactions I could find from people who have, it seems like it's a pretty good adaptation. If anyone who's actually read it has any thoughts, let us know in the comments. But yeah, other than that, there's been talk of a live-action adaptation over the years in some form, but so far that's just amounted to rumors and hearsay. You never know. With the way certain old, seemingly dead franchises are resurrected nowadays, maybe we will see more Vampire Hunter D media in the future. Maybe we'll even get another game. I can only hope, if that happens, whoever develops it takes a close look at the PlayStation original. It has some good ideas and fun mechanics, just needs polish and a solid combat system behind it. Until then, I'll keep dreaming about it. Or just go play Devil May Cry 3 again.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
And that's it for Vampire Hunter D. I hope you enjoyed it. It was fun rereading the Vampire Hunter D books and rewatching the movies, as well as reading the manga. I'd never read that before, and it's pretty good. I like it. The physical English copies are way out of print and ridiculously expensive secondhand, so I had to go with the Japanese ones. They are available on Kindle in English, but I've heard the scans and formatting are trash. Anyway, I'm sure if you search hard enough, you can find decent scans out there, maybe in some archive somewhere. Just saying. The English novels are on Kindle too, and they fare much better. Some formatting errors and typos, but there are typos in the physical books too, so, you know, what are you gonna do? I also bought this collection of Yoshitaka Amano's black and white illustrations from Vampire Hunter D that just came out this year. This is really cool to have. The sketches are much bigger and higher res than they are in the little novels. It's also neat to see how his art style evolves. I just wish it also had the cover illustrations, but still, I love it. Oh, and before anyone asks, no, the next video is not going to be about Devil May Cry. It's going to be about something much weirder and less fun to play, but will definitely make for a more interesting video. So yeah, if you liked this one, you can like it, write your thoughts about it in the comments, share it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. All of those things that YouTube deems important, I suppose. And hey, if you really like what I do and you've got the means, you can support the channel by becoming a patron or a YouTube member. Paid supporters get their names in the videos. They get to watch them a couple days before they're public, they get access to exclusive updates from me, and they can watch a playlist of bonus videos that I release sometimes. If you support with $5 or more each month, you get your name read out loud at the end of videos like these Dungeon Architects. 2Password for Kids, 8-Bit Unicorn, An Owl, Andrew Cole, Atalanta D, XG 1992, Axer, Bad Baphomet, Birthquake, Bliblio Jones, Breeze McMothman, Brendan Jamieson, Brian but on Patreon, KS Arcanum, Dan, Daniel Hamilton, Dan Persona, Darkest Abyss, Das Guru, David Carr, David Host, Dilatar Tepes, Deep Dive Stocks, Dirt Possum, Dollar Store DJ, Draco E, Desurio, Duck, Dijon, El Jaguar, Elizabeth Narin, Emmeline Payne, FM Kalash, Eugene, Faye of Whimsy, Famous Koozie, Fnar, Fuzzmosis, Garbage Person, Gloria Gordon, Half HP, Hibernia Scholar, High Food Court, Holo Best Waifu, Horace Rees. I'm starting to feel like most of my parasocial relationships are one-sided. Ian C, Insidious Bliss, Izzy Lexus, Jack the Nipper, Jan Calway, Jared Bynum, Jared Carlson, Jay Chisel, J Bud Airline, John B, John Grave, Jose Baron, Joshua Ayers, J.R. Hurd, Jugemu Unko, Justin Darnell, King Bonkers, Error 1884, Kale, Captain Ketchup, Kenny Mitchell, Kevin Hanley, Krizik, Kyowa, Lamont Atkinson, Lilium, Mira, Magic Circuit, Mateo Feo, Max Grosshandler, Maximus Brime, Mega Dizzy, Meownarchy, aka Roxy, Micah Powers, Miguel Luis Estrada, Moon Muse Entertainment, Mortags, Mr. Loser, Mr. Eater, Neck Out the Brave, Nick Wolf, Nightshade, Nini the Kiddin, Nocadian, Nozomi Corgi, Opalin, Otter Redo, Paul Fierce, Pazuzu, Persparkle, Prinny Dude, Razor Good Stuff, Rez, Richard Dante Sanchez, Richard Cutting, Richard 12, Roberto Hernandez, Rocket Owl, Rog U, St. Murray, Salvatore Toasty, SC Fade, Shannon Gates, Shivering Dova, Sigma Simp 69, Silatixo, Slowbro 96, Snarls Darwin, Spoons, Suiko Force, Supertramp, Tenny Lava, That Uninformed Guy, The Plath, The Stoic One, Tucky Ducky, Tyranny Frigate, Veyron, Venno Knox, Vexen Dagrin, Vinci, Volfram C, West Covered Wars, Whole Cloud, Willem Rosenthal, Winter Chonk, Zarin, Yoni 42, Zethrin, and Ziasquin. As well as these dungeon connoisseurs. 32-Bit Mason, 84D 93R, Aaron Kwolek, Aaron Yeager, Abraham Moss, Adrian H, Ariman, Alberto Amatucci, Alex Nadeau, Alex Renko, Alexis Faculde, Alice, Aliquem, Ambrowski, Andres Chirino, Andrew Tovanidi, Anjan01, Ann Lies, Anthony Labella, Archaeolinguist, Aronai Saez, Arrested Rabbit, Ashley Black, Athena Von Nacht, Awalai, Aurelianus, Ava M. Dumas, Azure, B. Saunders, Baron of Books, Big
Jeff Osheta, Blue Mantis, Bryce Holder, Booer, Bunny, Keiichi, Kanzadu, Captain Doctor, Captain Swing, Cappyberry, Caramel Cream, Careless Wesper, Caroline, Cassandra M, Cat, Cat Soup, Cerebral, Calamari, Churm Slurm, Chris Zappaslave Collins, Sonic Hermes, Chumpkins, Claim, Claire Myers, Cloudy Wizard, Clovo, Cohort, Cool Dr. Money, Cormac, Crassus Zero, Crismeow, Crippler Jones, Crooked Rook, Dale Walden, Damar, Daniel Morton, Daniel Tallow, Dapney, Days Clockwork, Dean Hubbard, Deekadico, Delilah Lindonk, Derek Whitted, Devin McCullough, Dr. Jellybean, Dr. Discord, Don Kung, Dragon Ace SG7, Dragos Butte, Drykantbrot, Dribdabok, Dungeon Heat, Dust Bunny, EJ the Battle Mage, Edge, Enrico Amato, Eric Pinonin, Eric Clapton, Ethereal Omni, Fangro, Feathered Scorpion, Fed Uppin, Flara Blitz Flara, Francine Bridge, Gary, Gaming Suck 69 followed by 7 9s, Gandalf the Gay, Gwynblade, Hokon Boyum, Harvey Bodega, Heartman, Hennius, I thought our impending doom would be here by now, IR Sticky, I'm in your walls drinking soup, Icehammer 82, Igglemorg, I Love Misty 1985, Impending Doom XO, there's your Impending Doom buddy, just had to wait for the alphabet to catch up, Indigo Happy, Irregular Rob, It's a Mia Mia, Nekokami, It's Dizzy, Jay, Jack in the Candle, Jacob Havlick, James Chambers, Jason Cook, Jason Davies, Jay Jombles, JDR, Jeff K, Gemma, Jeremiah Larson, Joan Valise, Joe Gother, Jollybean, June Choi, Joshua Weber, Juniper Currybow, Justin Jacobs, Kane, Cami Kang, Karen Rosenow, Katharina Haas, Katie K, Keith Bastow Cox, Keywork Doggo, Nomadic, Kono Kuim, Critter, Lady Nagrum, Laney, Leif Bundy, Noodle, Limidgeton, Leonardo Schwarz de Souza, Leslie Dominguez, Liana, Lil Ecto 1, Lynn, Listens for Abscure Games, Long Arms 07, Lux Custodes, Mac Mothorpe, Macrophage, Man with Confetti, Matthew Samael, Max Allison, Max Cohen, Maxwell Bauer, Maxwell Valentine, Mick Eldritch, Mephistopheles, Michael Carpenter, Michael Cesares, Michael H. Prey, Middy is a Bean, Midge, Minced Meat, Miss M, Monkey Kid 61, More Ink, Mountain Horse, Mr. Al Packleton, Mumbles, Nagatochi, Necroner, Nelno, Nick in SC, Oheimkai, Old Dead Lemons, Olegv11, Olofal Bean, Parapugs #1 fan, Phil Bernard, Please Keep Making Videos, Poofy, Ragnell Avalon VTuber, Rella B, Rasmus Jensen, Razortail, Refkins, Rezo 55555, Rifflesby, Ripley Riley, Robert Z, Rodrigo Vaz Pina Cabral Silva, Rokoff, Ruby St. Dennis, like Sandy Nee, Ryan Scheffler, Sable, Sam, Samuel Sheena, Sarksis, Sashi, Savvy Fav, Scorpix22, S-Dash, Sensei Wolfman, Sewing Savage, Shad is Dad, Sean, Shellacked, Sherry Bowberry, Sirbill 17, Ciceren, Skyclad Weeb, Sleep Forever, Slycat, Solar, Someone Else, Sorbet, Sparkadark, Spencer Newton, Spencer Watts, Sumire, Surprise, The Fox, Sweaty Turtle, Sydney Schreckengoss, T, Tarask, Taylor Martin, T. Boogie, Teddy, Tennis Disaster, The Corsair himself, The Dog from the Chinese restaurant in Mukojima, The Beige Knight, Thief of 16-bit Technology, Tom Rolling, Tor Dragon, Troffma Senator, True Axiom, Tuesday Twin, TV's Brent, Cup, Unknown Relic, Upgrade Now, Vange, Venseer, Violet, Vixie, Volkendo, Voxelrat, Weary Dromedary, Whiskey Dono, Wild and Horned Hermit, Wiley, Wanser, Zills, Yummy the Cute Bun Bun, Young Neon Beast, Your Man in Japan, Zilta, Zombo Rabo, Zorik, Nate, and, I can't read Chinese, but Google Translate says this reads, Thank You Planet.
Thank you all for your support, and thank you very much for watching. Until next time, Vampire Hunter D, check it out. Dungeon Chill, out.
Exciting, mysterious, intense, graphic, provocative, raw. This is no ordinary animation. This is the exotic, bizarre, and beautiful world of Japanese anime. And this is your invitation to enter with the modern classic Akira.
1-800-414-3355 now to order Akira for only $4.95 plus $3.79 shipping and handling. Future volumes are $19.95 plus shipping. Mature audiences only.